So good day, I'm Denis from Kaspersky. Today, literally from Kaspersky. It's our office in Moscow. Now it's possible to visit. So don't be angry if some colleagues appear, but it's quite empty now. And let's spend half an hour of our lives speaking about this campaign. It took our attention because of the target profiles. Mostly when you are doing trade intel, when you're doing state-sponsored actors, you are facing diplomatic entities as a targets, maybe big telecoms, someone who could own some valuable data in terms of the high profile political related agenda. This is not the case. This is not the case because in this time it was some industrial targets, and we would also cover some technical details like the custom steganography, and I like this naive implementation of HTTP over RTP you would see, and also some kind of Cyrillic accent for all the story. Let us start. Let us start. So we are already published on our secure list .com the technical text about it. So for all the geeks who want to take a look at the technical part, please also to take a look at the secure list blog post, because in half an hour it's impossible to cover all the technical details, but we would try. We would try. Along with this boring geek stuff, we would try to emphasize more fancy hype part everybody is interested in, like targets, no names. So also we wouldn't do attribution, but you would see in this case so many natural language artifacts, so many hints you could come to your own conclusion related to the region of the operators and the region of the targets. And in the very end, we would sum up. So all in the game, all in the game, and we would wait and see. We would start with a naming. Maybe you already see on this background free. Let me return the previous one. Here you could see this free-headed knight better. We have to redraw it, not to be sued by some intellectual property owners, but I think even after the redrawing, it's quite recognizable. This is the knight from the Monty Python. But we call this story Monty Free, not only because we are fans of this is a real old story, but also because take a look at this decrypted configuration data. First of all, it's XML based, right? Some XML, some binary in the start, and in the very start of the configuration block, you see magic, as usual, 4 bytes magic, MT3D. So D belongs to the configuration data only, but with MT3, you could saw all the way through all the models, like mutex name, MT3 unique, like command line comments, like MT3 restart. So quite obvious, original name of this development was MT3. So Monty Free, right? What else you could see here on this decrypted config? Also, maybe for those who are not familiar with the Cyrillic, you couldn't read some strings, right? So second from the top, it's a system info. I could read it because I'm in Moscow. It's a proper Russian language. Let me translate for you all the Cyrillic one. System info, process list, and desktop screenshot. This is it. So we have not only this magic for the naming, we use for the naming, but also some natural language artifacts already. And let's take a bird view of all what happened. As we saw, as our research shows, it all started with, as usual, we saw some quite rare, quite not similar with already known malicious tool sets. Something new, something quite rare, seems targeted. We try to research it. We actually research it, and this is the result, bird view of our result. Spreading as SFX files, we register it. Inside just a compressed model. Let me emphasize, all these models names, like a loader, kernel, HTTP transport, it's names given by the developers. We don't invent it. There's no, it's a C++ malware, but no RTTI on board this time, no type information, but a profound logging. heavily loading inside the RAM, even on disk with a solid form. That's why we get the names. And today, after secure release blog post, I already got the question about kernel model. Ex-colleague of mine thinks it's what is to do with the kernel, operating system kernel. No, it's a kernel model. It's not related to operating system. It's just the name, it's still user space, but it's the naming given by the developers. So SFX, after it, loader. Loader needs bitmap. So quite for the steganography, quite a familiar data format, right? From the with bitmap picture, pixel array after the header, it was some parameters you would see to decrypt steganography, and also in pixel array, encrypted kernel model. So let's stick to the fact kernel, it's the name. It's not operating system kernel, right? And after it, it's also decrypted, dropped to disk. Inside, it's a binary blobs for binary blobs with the HTTP transport model. When the kernel needs to communicate with the external data source, in this case, it's a legit public cloud, major legit public clouds, it decrypts from these blobs the HTTP transport, and using also decrypted XML-based config, you saw it on the second slide, communicate using the tokens from the config with public clouds. This is overall scheme. So here you could see three models. Also there is fourth. We would see the table later. The fourth is very auxiliary. It's for the persistence. You would see it's not a little bit standalone. That's why it's not on this bird view or not on this workflow. Let's go further, spreading. And in XFS files, it's quite a specific portable executable files names inside SFX. It names like lures. Like you could see on this script, SFX script, it's like a in vitro, some ID.pdf, or in vitro, it's the names of the local medical laboratories, but please don't consider it as a targets. I really don't think laboratories were the targets. I think it was made for some spear phishing in the current situation. Maybe here goes your medical analysis, something like this. And you also see the name of the initial function open. It's a common, let's call it ABI or maybe API of all these models. Open is an entry point besides the DLL entry points themselves. So drop to the temp, run open function, and delete the files. Besides in vitro, also we registered names like employees phones list and TechTask. .doc. Actually, once again, it's not docs, it's not PDFs. There are no lures, no decoys in this case. It's a PE, just with spoofed extensions. Okay. And regarding the models, let's start with this auxiliary. I really briefly mentioned link update. The persistent is also quite naive. It's just editing of the Windows Quick Launch files. LNK files was edited to run with loader open function. Why not? So people run inside the target infrastructure, runs the browser from the Quick Launch on their Windows, and the loader appears. Loader, I suppose all this task with bitmap files, it's actually anti-detection, right? So all this custom steganography serves, from my point of view, like to a way of full intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention system, because in case of the PE, it could be caged. In case of the BMP, maybe IDS, IPS would just let it go. So some anti-detection for the network-based systems, security system. Kernel, you see the algorithms. Let us scratch the surface of the encryption. You saw triple DES and RSA. And here, a triple DES serves to decrypt configuration data, but triple DES key encrypted with the RSA. And also traffic to the, let's call it C2, actually public clouds. In this case, also encrypted with the same RSA keys. So in Microsoft format, public and private RSA keys are on board. And HTTP transport could communicate with the WebDAV And also with RDP and Citrix, I love this solution. So how it appeared? Imagine when HTTP, when kernel model tell to the HTTP transport, please let me communicate through RDP. Okay, HTTP transport decrypted, run, and try to find the window with the name remote desktop connection. But this name have to be also in Russian. So it's not remote, it's like a удаленный рабочий стол, remote desktop connection, typical RDP window name. And they tried to silently run Internet Explorer inside it. And actually, HTTP transport has a function to send to the window special keys like Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, Ctrl-A. They use the clipboard shared between the RDP session and localhost to put first URL to this hidden Internet Explorer, then content to this page. And to get the results, they use Ctrl-A and once again clipboard to get the results back. I never thought I would see such a method to work with HTTP over RDP. In case of the Citrix, it's the same. They don't implement that profound protocol inside the network model. No, they just edited the link to the client, already implemented alleged client of Citrix, and use it just to send the data and get the results back. Naive, maybe, but maybe for them it works. It works all this stuff like a persistent with a quick launch and RDP or HTTP. Seems like Vicaro, all the four models. And let's spend one slide on encryption. Steganography, we try to find on a GitHub, on any publicly available sources with implementation of steganography. For me, it looks quite custom. I couldn't find the implementation they could take from the GitHub. Like nowadays, many of the actors are, you know, if you're doing trade and tell, it's quite popular to take some Blackbone, whatever, implemented on the GitHub and to embed it into the malware. Logs, I mentioned it. In RAM, it's even not encrypted. But on disk, there could be some questions, some performance questions about the dropping log to the disk all the time. But anyway, they save it and just XOR with a 1 byte. Config, we already covered, right? Triple DES, key under RSA, config under triple DES. Network model, another custom XOR-based encryption with a round key. You would see the formula for the next round 4 bytes XOR key on the next slides. Communication, RSA. This is all encryption we were able to found in models. So it's like a mixing of the strong modern cryptography and some custom development. And steganography, the parameters, remember in steganography on the slide, we mentioned on a workflow, we mentioned some parameters to decrypt the kernel model. And this is 3 of them, IID, IParam and iSize. iSize, it's like a self-describing parameter. IParam let us know which number of bits have to be taken from all the bytes in a pixel array to get the main model. IID just lets them know, do they need, after they gather all the bits, do they need XOR decryption with around 4 bytes XOR key or not? In the samples we observe, yes, they need. They gather the bits. You could see on a scheme below. Yeah, maybe I'm not the best artist, but I try to draw it. And bytes is reversed. Only last bit they need for the take this 3 parameter, and after it they get all the needed for the decryption. Okay, enough for the steganography. Let's go further. Another screenshot with the config. What you saw on this config, what you saw, besides in the very beginning, you see the scheduling, right? Some timings. It's actually for the Windows schedule tasking. After it, in a Dropbox section, you see edited access token and the chunk, the amount of data to take one after another using this token for the Dropbox. And also the files, the next block, once again, magic MT3D, and the names of the extensions of the files. Quite obvious it's the documents, right? So they want to check documents. What else come to your attention here? I think you could look at the second from the below directory, and maybe not all of you could read it. Let me translate it for you. It's recent files, once again in proper Russian. But this one such a directory could be found only on a localized Cyrillic Windows version, like in case of the RDP window. So more and more ideas from which region the targets have to be, right? So enough, you see the extensions, you see the directories and the extension of interest and some scheduling task. But I have to mention, all the way so far, I told you there with the tokens, but with some samples, we were able to saw emails. And these emails real to be pretend like a Chinese speaking looks alike. It's on the public email services. It was two of them. And from my point of view, you have to be, if you are an operator, you have to be from Asia or from, let us say, Eastern Europe, right? You couldn't mix both. Or it's a strange actor after it, I could say. But this, I suppose, it's a false flag. Why I'm thinking so? Because from my point of view, it's much easier to register a couple of the emails on the public email services than to install Cyrillic keyboard, encrypt, embed your Cyrillic comments in a configuration data encrypted with a triple dash, etc., etc. I think that one was quite true, but with seems to false flags. Please drop me a line in the chat or in a Q&A, but I think better Zoom chat. What's your thoughts? What's am I right or not? I think this is much easier. That's why I suppose emails have to be the false flag, not all the what I mentioned before, not the actually comments in the configuration data and the name of the directory of the Windows. Okay, but please drop a line. What's your opinion after the presentation? I would read it and we would see. Format of the configuration, you remember the magic after the Monty tree. After it, 4 bytes timestamp in the epoch time, and very common fields, 4 bytes each, like a header size, XML size, and XML body itself. You see it on a screenshot. So such a structure format for all the tasks. One config could contain several tasks, and on a screenshot, you see initial task embedded inside the models. So it's also worth to cover the handler of the commands, right? You see what commands could execute all what the normal remote administration tool have to execute. Restart itself, so take the file, run the file. You see it on on your screen. Let me just emphasize one of this list. It's a watch removable, because the malware able in a separate window in a Windows terms. So it's for sure it's not a visible window, but just someone who could receive message and handle the message. If someone plug removable device, also the same files with the same extension would be tried to not only get not only files from the recent directories we already know, but also from the removable devices. For me, it's just a pure and simple gathering of the information on what this entity is working right now. And to take a look at the HTTP IO control, also GDrive and Dropbox, with the methods of CTask class, which would decrypt and execute correspondingly HTTP transport with the corresponding parameters. So fingerprinting, screenshotting, and gathering the files and taking a look at the logs. Okay. Let us, I think enough, let us also save some time for the Q&A. I hope we still have some. And to sum up, what is interesting for me? For me here, I have an impression what technical level differs among the models. Maybe several developers, I don't know, because take a look, the cryptography, yes, cryptography is using just a Windows API. But it's normal, many malware using just Windows API, not embed the cryptography inside the samples. But triple DES and RSA seems good for me. If they separate the keys from the samples, it would be even better. But all this stuff with HTTP over RDP, also some decisions seem strange to me. So steganography is good. Some algorithms of the encryption also seems to me good, but some decisions are quite strange. So to sum up, maybe for sure in terms of the persistence, in terms of the initial infection, it's not comparable with the top-notch players in the world of the targeted attacks, but for sure they invest their time. You see 4 models, so many classes, they invest sometimes. It's not like one developer in 1 month. I think it's a much more human hours you have to spend with it. And so we still see if believe the header of the executable files in September. It's still under construction. It's still in development. With models, so I suppose we would see maybe some new, it's not for 1 or 2 campaigns, we would see some new activities from them.